Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Nurturing Astrology podcast. I'm Dominique Jaramillo, your astrologer and host. I believe astrology can fast-track personal growth, improve relationships, and empower parents. On this show, I will bring you practical guidance and insight from my own work, studies, and life experiences, as well as interview experts to bring you stellar wisdom from other teachers and professionals to inspire you on your journey. I'm so glad you're here and thanks for tuning in. So sit back, enjoy the show, and be sure to follow, like, and subscribe to catch every new episode as soon as it drops. Okay, let's dive into today's show. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Nurturing Astrology podcast. I'm Dominique, your astrologer and host, and today I am kicking off a really exciting new series about the blend of astrology and IFS, internal family systems parts work. This has been something really popular and exciting in the field of healing and therapy, and I love blending systems. So I am bringing on gifted psychotherapist and parts work practitioner, Sabrina Conrad, and we're going to dive into all of the planetary placements and how they can blend with and work with IFS. So we're going to kick it off today with the moon and our emotional needs, and of course, motherhood and nurturing ourselves and our families and children. So I'm so excited about this new series. I'm so glad you're here. Make sure you drop questions and comments. Let us know if you like this and how we can go deeper if you want, if you're interested. So thanks for being here and let's dive in. Okay, here we go. Today I'm here with Sabrina Conrad. She is a psychotherapist of IFS, and I'm so thrilled to dive into this topic with you. Welcome, Sabrina.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I know we've been talking about the blending of astrology and IFS. So I think we just wanted to start a new series to dive into the ways that they blend, the similarities, the differences. And I think we've kind of decided the best way to break it down is maybe to look at like a planetary or a planet placement, a planet, and dive into IFS and how they might connect so that it doesn't get really blurred, right?
Mm-hmm.
So today we're going to kick off with the moon and motherhood. Obviously, we're all mothers. So we know that the moon represents our, emotional life, our inner nature, motherhood, nurturing, our experience of our mother. So before we dive into the connections, can you kind of give us a basic introduction of what IFS is? So for people who don't know.
Sure. So I am a registered psychotherapist. I'm based in Toronto, Canada, and I'm an IFS therapist. So that stands for Internal Family Systems, and I've been practicing this for about 8 years. And internal family systems is a specific approach, and it's kind of like a map of consciousness. So it's this idea that inside of us, we have a lot of different parts. And parts is a word used to refer, it can be an emotion, it can be a sensation, it can be a thought, it can be basically anything can be a part.
Okay.
And then there's so much more to say, but maybe we'll just go into it in like that practical
Okay,
way.
yeah. Because when you
Yeah.
say parts, I totally get it. I feel like what rings to me when you say many parts is I always tell people there are a million and one ways something can manifest in the chart. Like when you're looking at your moon, there's a million and one ways that this can manifest for you, and it can be determined based on your life experience, the self-awareness you have, your kind of ability to reflect and self-reflect and get into those things and explore those things. So it can manifest in many ways, and we can work with it in many ways, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to the what you know of, because you know some astrology, right? You're
Yeah.
familiar.
Yeah.
So you know what the moon represents in astrology. How would you initially connect that moon and what the moon represents in astrology with IFS and working with that same kind of dynamic of emotions and inner life and
Mhm.
emotional triggers, our mother wound, those kinds of things.
Yeah, and so it can be kind of a trailhead. It can be a gateway to like what you might have. So moon refers to inner world, and if I was to do an astrology reading with you and you might ask me about something about my relationship with my mom, immediately it's like what would come up for me? And that's already a part. If I feel like, oh, it's so lovely and warm, like that's a part. I can acknowledge that part, get to know it. But if there's like maybe usually what happens with folks is like there's many things that come up.
Yeah.
There's like at least four or five things, and then even to separate it out can be so helpful to be like, oh, I have this part that really loves and respects my mom, or I have this one that feels this like tightness, and I don't even know what that is. So already just naming like
Mm.
moon, like or and a sign that can already like just watching, scanning your body as you're kind of being asked a question already leads to parts.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, we could, as astrologers, do literally a session on just that. And I think a lot of astrologers do, like, let's dive into your moon, let's dive into your sun. So I think that makes total sense because I've asked those questions. I can look at someone's moon and their moon sign and kind of get an initial indicator of what they might have experienced their mother to be
Mhm.
like, or how they might nurture themselves, or kind of, I always ask them, like, what do you do to self-soothe when you're stressed? What is your go-to for nurturing yourself?
Mm,
And that usually immediately will show me an indicator of the sign,
yep.
that it's in. But then there are, when I get into the experience of their mother, and how they're then mothering from that place. We know we either do the same or we want to do the opposite,
Mhm.
emulation or difference.
Mhm.
That's where I think some more parts can come up where they're like, well, I liked this, but I really didn't do that. Or I had a client who was like wanting their kids to be in sports because that's what they experienced and that's what they thought they should do, and they didn't realize there are the differences. I think that's a big part too, right? Of understanding the differences between us and our children and our partners and other people, the stuff we're working
Yes.
with, right?
Yeah, yeah, and that's actually where parts work as a framework is so good because I have a bunch of parts, but my daughter, she has her own parts, and then any one of them can kind of come up and take over, for example, in a tantrum at any given time. And then so just seeing it as like that's just her like there's a part that's upset because she didn't get something, that's not her.
Yes.
Or if I lose it, like, okay, I had a part that was frustrated. That doesn't mean that all of me is, or I'm not a bad
Yes.
mom because I had that moment of frustration.
Yes, I feel like that's so important because I mean, I use astrology as a personal growth tool for myself and with clients. And I think you're right. These two create both deep frameworks for that deeper understanding of ourselves and the personal growth journey. I think we go on it and we think, oh, I've done so much work in this area of my life, and I've kind of mastered this, or I think I've healed that part of me that allows me to feel more confident in this area of my life. And then all of a sudden something happens, a circumstance or a situation, or you have a child that is not an easy child or you completely butt up against, and you're like, wait a minute, I thought I mastered this. Now I'm right back in square one. But with parts, what I'm understanding is that you're not necessarily at square one. You've got maybe a different part of you that has gotten some traction and learned to manage this kind of energy, but something else has not. And you say that we can hold them at different ages as well.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so with parts work, what's nice is like, yes, you might have done some work and then you get triggered again because life happens.
happens.
But what IFS is so deeply practical that when you people get the hang of it usually between like 8 and 10 sessions, then they can start doing it themselves. But like the deeper work, you kind of want that therapist with you. But once you can get that, you can kind of untrigger way, way quicker once you have it. And you can like almost immediately be like, oh, this is like this clenching in my stomach is related to this thing because you know how to sit with it and you know how to talk to it. So there's always more healing to do, but you can kind of get unblended is the word way, way faster the more work that you do, the more you practice it.
Unblended. I like that. Unblended. It's a nice word. It's
Yeah.
and we were talking earlier, like it's a I like that word better than reparenting. You were saying reparenting doesn't really like kind of exist in parts work.
Yeah, parts work is more general than IFS, so maybe there's parts work that uses reparenting, but reparenting is not an IFS term.
Okay.
because IFS, the idea is that we have these parts, and parts can be like energies or sensations, and they can have different ages. And sometimes they'll tell you their age, but for not everyone has parts that talk to them. Some of
Mhm.
them they show up as like a wisp of color, some of them it's just like a sensation. And so through the work, you can kind of, as the therapist, I can get a sense of the age of a part. And yeah, that's the big thing about it. That's so interesting is we all have parts of us at different ages. And
Okay.
so even if I have a part that's very, very mature, I guarantee have some parts that are very immature.
Yeah, right,
And
right.
that one will come up usually when I least want it to. And that's
Yeah.
just to even understand ourselves that way is so compassionate that like we're never going to be always evolved because we have these other parts. The goal of IFS is to heal the trauma, to heal any unwanted trauma. Like so, and I don't know if there's 100% healing, like, but the goal is to kind of not carry things from the past that we don't want to.
Mm, yeah, that makes sense. So talk to me a little bit about that too. Like trauma healing is another really big thing that people talk about, healing your trauma. And so, and I think I agree with you in that it's really about working with our wounds, working with our challenges and our traumas, because the way that I've worked with them, things that have happened in my life, I guess I kind of sense that maybe I've learned to work with them when I can discuss them or share them with someone and there's no trigger. Like there's
Mhm.
no real emotional attachment to it anymore. It's like almost like it happened to someone else, but I
Yes.
know it happened to me. It's in my, and there might be a time where it'll come up in my mind in a circumstance or something happens in life, but it doesn't, like you said, you can quickly recognize and go, oh yeah, there's not really anything there. It feels like it happened to somebody else, but it's
That
still part
definitely
of my
sounds like a
story, right? So
yeah. That's so perfect. Yeah, exactly. And like another way of looking at IFS is memory reconsolidation. So what you named is an example of healing because traumatic memory gets stored differently than regular memory. It's almost like regular memory is like this like file cabinet, everything's neatly organized and then kind of gets forgotten. Like you don't always remember what you had for lunch last week. But
right.
traumatic memory, it's like this jumble that's like somewhere in our bodies and it like we don't have any choice of when it comes up. Like you could smell something and all of a sudden you're like back whenever the trauma happened. It's
Yep.
visceral and it's immediate and it's like frozen in time, but it can come up in any given moment. And
Okay.
so once we heal it, it actually gets kind of refiled.
I like
So
that
it's not,
refiling.
yeah, so it's not living in this like visceral way. It's not stored in your body. So it still happened, but you
Mhm.
can access it exactly how you were talking about.
Okay. Okay, that's great. So can you give me an example of like when you're working with a client then and say it is a young mother who's, having challenges in being a mother or working with her, relationship with her mother or struggling as a new parent, a young parent. How would you work with a young mom or a mom who came to you with those kinds of like
Hmm.
struggles?
Yeah, I mean, now first I'm thinking like, when does she have time?
Yeah.
So,
Right, exactly.
so
Right.
if there's a young mom getting, oh, you are amazing because the hoops that you have to jump to even get a therapy session on the books is big.
Yeah.
And so then I mean, the IFS is so good because if you're doing it right, it leads to self-compassion.
Yep.
So whatever, most likely what's going to happen in a young mom is or a new mom, let's say new mom, sorry,
Yeah, Nima.
is there's going to be a part, am I doing it right? Am I doing it
Yes.
right? Like, and terrified of doing it wrong.
Hmm.
And so just even naming and like kind of separating, like naming this part means that we can separate from it a bit.
Hmm.
And then we get to learn what is the MO of this part? Why is it worrying about doing it right? And almost always it will say, I'm trying to help. I just want to take care of this life as best as I possibly can.
That's what every mom asks.
Every mom. And then, like, based on your own experiences as a child, this might be connected to this one. Like, I just don't want to do what my mom did, or I just want to do what my mom did. So
Right.
it's like there's going to be this extra, all these other parts that are going to be backing up this worry. So
Hmm.
that's even just naming and map, we would map it by naming and like mapping how they all like sit together. That
Hmm.
already can give the person like a way to zoom out and be
Yeah.
like, oh, like, okay, this is happening inside me. They're
Yeah.
trying to help. These parts are trying to help. They just don't know how else to do it.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it like speaks very much to an astrology session where I'm looking at their moon and I just want to be the best mom for my child. And I immediately draw that back and I give them, because it's all about fear and worry and concern, is that your child has their own blueprint, their own parts, their own energetic nature and natural way of being that they came in with, and yours is separate from that. So that in itself is like they're on their own journey. It's not,
Mhm.
it's like there's almost nothing you can do in some regards.
Yes.
So taking care of yourself is the best thing you can do. That whole filling your cup first, putting your own oxygen mask on first.
Hmm.
I always want to bring it back to mom first,
Hmm.
and that
And it's
that
the same
inner
thing.
thing, right?
Yeah, and
Both
it's
really
that's so
similar.
such a good parallel because they're both maps. And what
Yeah.
do maps do? They can like let you zoom out.
Yes. Because it seems like for me, like I did talk therapy. I did a lot of it. I'm an advocate of all forms of like systems and forms of support for personal growth and healing. But once I learned my astrology and I kind of got this framework and I could look at something and not go, oh, that's why I'm that way, but that's why I'm that way. And now with that power, what can I do? It kind of fast tracked things for me.
Mhm.
And I felt like I did so much healing in such a short amount of time. So do feel like astrology can be a therapeutic fast track for yourself. Then
Mhm.
you're better to understand the differences, creating that compassion for another, including your child, and the differences. So, an IFS seems like a way of almost like human design too, like where you can embody, like looking to where things kind of live in the body, because
Yes.
astrology is up here in your head. Like
Yes.
I was talking to somebody the other day, like knowledge is power, and sometimes like me giving people the awareness of the information can either start the process, and for some it can be liberating just to get that right, bing,
Yes.
and they're
Yes.
good and they can
Yeah.
start working and moving through. But other people, it really seems to live in them in a way that it's harder, and then I'm going, okay, what healing modality might work to help
Yes.
them through this? And
And
it
the
seems
earlier your trauma, the more likely it's going to live in
in the
your body.
body. That's good. That makes sense. And the
Yeah.
moon is the body. We know we hold things emotionally, right? So IFS seems like a great addition, like to go deeper. Like I don't feel like they're two things that can work really well together. Are
Yeah.
there IFS practitioners who actually do use astrology? Do you use it in your practice?
I don't feel adept yet, but I would like to. But there are a couple. There are a handful that use it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
know a lot of therapists and different, types of therapy are bringing in astrology, which
Yes.
I think is so cool.
It makes
Um,
sense to me because astrology is non-pathologizing and IFS is non-pathologizing. So they're both, you look at neither of them are saying you're doing anything wrong. And
yeah,
both of them look at ancestral stuff and
yes,
transgenerational stuff. And so they kind of can take some of the blame off. Like we put,
yes,
anyone who's listening to this podcast I already know they're like a good parent
right.
because if you're listening to anything on conscious parenting, you
Yeah,
have a part that's like, I want to be the best parent I can be.
yeah,
Right. But that comes often with this guilt or this self-blame. And I like both of these because they can be so gentle and so nurturing. And self-compassion it's always just a good. It's a high frequency. It's a good thing to get into. You can't force it, but I think IFS and astrology both can land us into a more self-compassionate place.
I do too. That's why I like went to this nurturing astrology, because I'm a Cancer rising and I do come across as the mom. And I tell people I nurture people whether they want it or not. It's just who I am.
Yes, yeah. And I'm
Yeah.
Cancer, Sun, 10th house, right? Like it makes sense. It just, yeah, being a
Yeah,
therapist makes sense for me.
absolutely. So can maybe like walk us through maybe an example. Like what do you think, like we could give some people some examples of like
Yeah.
practical tools that they could use. Like you said, women and moms are busy. So
Mhm.
they might not be able to get a session or be able to afford a session or a therapist or what have you. So if they know their moon and their moon sign, which pretty much anyone who's into astrology does, right? What kind of practical tips can we give them, or you can give them, in terms of kind of starting to play with this idea of using and looking at the parts of their moon?
Okay, so let's maybe get like an example here. Do you have an example you can think of, like where there's a client, for example, or a mom with the moon struggling with their own moon placement, or maybe the moon sign of her child, and
Oh
then
my
we can
gosh,
kind of
so
look at like a parenting sort of issue.
scenario. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, let's see offhand. Well, I mean, we can look at the blending of like an air versus a water. I mean,
Okay.
like I have a moon in Libra and my sun is a moon in Pisces.
Hmm.
Air and water right there. I can tell you right now, I have struggles. I thought immediately like I'm not gonna be able to communicate with this child. Like he's gonna, but it dropped me into my water. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So I think elementally is a really great place to start.
Yeah.
I've had moms who have Leo moon,
Hmm.
fire sign, right? Like need more play, but their child needs more structure, like Virgo moon.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, when Virgo moons, they create a little bit more like naturally Virgos or a Virgo mom with
Hmm.
which a tendency to um need everything the right way, need the schedules on point, you know, and that creates a lot of anxiety. So I try to help them let go that other side of that, that Pisces, when their child is like a Gemini moon or like, you know what I mean? Like,
I feel called out because I'm Virgo rising and my daughter is like playing with a lot of markers. And when she goes to draw on the wall, I like find myself maybe saying no too quickly, where it's like I could wash it off, but also I have parts that don't want to do more cleaning.
yes.
So, so that I feel really seen by the Virgo. Okay,
True.
so sorry, going back to okay, the Leo, we had the Leo playful mom and then and the child. So that may be interesting. Like that Leo mom, like if she was to if you were to name that and she was like, "Ooh, I'm feeling some like resistance about bringing more structure in." That could be such a great thing to look at. Well, what is this resistance? And then you could kind of see like where is it showing up in her? And you could have her kind of ask it like, what do you want me to know? Why are you here? How are you trying to help me? Because 99% of the time these parts are trying to help us.
Mm, okay.
And it might give her a clue and it might be something like it could just be innate. It could be temperament. We don't like structure. Or it could point to when we were young, there was so much structure and it was too much, right? Like we don't know. You kind of have to ask
Mhm.
that part. But what's so nice is just hearing and naming and noticing, oh, you're trying to help me in this way. I get it. That already will often, the part will soften because
Yeah.
they just want to feel heard. They want to feel seen just like little ones do.
Yeah. Maybe there's what came to me just now when you're saying that was this idea of like mommy timeouts. You know, like when a mom's triggered, I'm just like, okay, I remember saying like mommy needs a timeout, you
Hmm.
know. And that's the moment it sounds like maybe you could sit, take that 5 minutes for yourself and start asking those types of questions. Because as you're saying, I'm like, okay, if they're running around doing this stuff, like when do we have time to sit and ask these questions? What is this part trying to tell me? What is this? Right. So
Yeah.
maybe if it's just getting in it, starting a habit of when you feel a trigger or when something comes up, you know, like you, like, oh my God, she's gonna write on the wall right now. So instead of saying anything, you go and you're like, okay, let me take a sip of my tea. Let me go, okay, what
And I
doesn't
totally
really
didn't do
matter.
that, right? Even like as a therapist, I've done my own IFS work for so long and I still reacted. Like I
Yeah.
said no too dramatically, but what I can do, I mean, my daughter's too young, but when she's a bit older, is I can say, hey, like mommy didn't mean to say that. And
Yep.
I might use parts language. I might say a part of me got worried about the cleanup of the walls. I could even
Mhm.
say that, right?
Yeah.
And then, and then like just so to even start to name that.
hmm
Mm.
I totally agree. And I do think, and I'm curious about your thoughts about this in terms of showing our children emotion. Like I have had clients and moms who like want to keep it all together, will not show their emotion, will not be vulnerable with their children. And I know when they're young, it's one thing, you know, there's that can be confusing, but I do feel like it's important for moms to not be afraid to say, I'm sorry, because we're human. You are not going to get it right. We are all going to snap. We are all going to accidentally yell and like be short tempered. But say, I'm sorry I yelled, or mommy's just frustrated, or I'm having a bad day, you
Mhm.
know, or I'm feeling sad about something that has nothing to do with you.
Exactly. And
But
if you know you have a child that's sensitive and will pick up on
yes,
energy, that's so important to name it because they're already picking up on it.
yes, absolutely. We know that. We know that. And that's the other thing. Like my son is a lot of Pisces, and I was like, oh wow, like yeah, he's gonna feel it all. And I know that consciously made those, decisions and kept that in mind all the time. And yes, there were some parts of me that were like scared I was going to screw him up or I was going to make a mistake as a mom.
Mhm.
And then, but it was always a process of letting go and realizing it's better if I just show him I'm human
Yes.
and, say, I'm sorry. I've had conversations with my teen son of late through tears saying these tears have nothing to do with you or how I
Yes.
feel about you. It said, I'm just feeling how I'm feeling and I want to share it with you for the
Yes.
purpose
Exactly.
of our better connection and our
Yes.
improved relationship,
Yeah.
And so I do think communication is so important, and not everybody's good at that. It is a learned skill,
Yeah.
communication,
Yeah. And listen, I mean, I wish I could always have a neutral, even tone with my daughter, but
right?
for me, that's just not attainable. If you like, for others, it might be more attainable. But so then rupture and repair. Rupture and repair is a therapy term. It's not IFS specific, which is that when there's a rupture, so like maybe the therapist says something that the client didn't feel seen, then you name it, the client hopefully says, "Hey, I really didn't like what you said." A therapist gets a chance to apologize. And I think that happens in the parenting world all the time. Like,
Yep.
hey, like, I was a little crabby with you at dinner. I want you to know, like, that was my parts that are struggling with stress from work.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with you. And then you make that effort to double down on connection,
Yeah.
right? Through laughter, through play and whatever. And that's always the best way to repair with a kid is play and
Yeah.
connection.
Yeah. And do you use that language parts a lot?
Yes, like my daughter still, she's only 2, so she's
Yeah.
not really talking it, but I very much plan to.
Okay.
Like, oh, you have a part of you, like a part of you was upset that you didn't get to go to this
Mhm.
birthday party, right? And that's okay. This part's upset, like because I want her to know that that's not all of her.
Yeah, that's what I was asking because I think that's really important. It's like we have all these parts and instead of like you are this, you are that, or I'm feeling that, there is this when you use that term, it kind of creates space that
Exactly.
that it's not all of me. I'm, like yeah, I'm upset. I don't know why. A part of you is upset about something that maybe happened in your day. And it
Mhm.
also doesn't have to affect the whole of you.
Yes, and it's also useful for when like there's moments of we just feel so much. So you might have
Yes.
moments where you're feeling 20 parts at once.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Because like we have the reaction, then we have the shame, and then we have the guilt about the reaction, and it's all all happening at once, and then the regret and the overthinking, and just even noticing like, okay, this was the initial impulse, this was the shame, this was the
Yeah.
guilt.
So in the parts, there are, and I know it's everyone's a little bit different, but there's what do they call them? There's different types of parts. Like you were saying, like the exiles, the managers, the firefighters. Can you
Yeah.
explain the different, parts, like the names and how
Yeah.
they work for
The,
people?
I find the names honestly confuse people. The most important
Yeah.
thing to know is there's two kinds of parts. There's parts that
Okay.
have a job. So that means and that's going to be the majority of parts that people have,
Okay.
which is that they're trying to help you. It can be anxiety can be a part that's trying to help you. Overeating can be a part that's trying to help you. Like insomnia can, right? So
Mhm.
we call them helping parts or protector parts
Okay.
because they're trying to protect usually other more vulnerable parts of us that are holding pain and suffering.
Well, that's the moon, right? It's the ultimate protector, and the things we do on autopilot for self-protection
That's it.
all the
That's it.
time. That is
Yeah.
our moon.
Yeah. Yeah. And so other IFS therapists who use astrology will actually say that any planet is a part, right? That you're,
Absolutely. I was
yeah.
just going to say, yeah, I mean, I think if we do this series, we can literally go through every planet and talk about parts, but there'll be a lot of blending.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah, or
sure
there'll
we'll
be
be
a lot of like things will kind of come in and out. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's because then you're kind of like building the chart, for
Yes.
sure.
Yeah.
Because if your moon is in Virgo, you're looking at what Mercury's doing. That's and
Yeah.
how your ability to communicate what your needs are,
Yes.
But
But
in general,
the difference being, I think astrology is more like external with the map, and then IFS, you want to use that map to look inside rather than say, oh, I have a Virgo, I have a Taurus moon, so that must mean. I would
Mhm.
more like ask people to go inside and scan your body and see what comes up because we never want to overlay.
Yeah. I think that's a good lesson and a good reminder for astrologers and for people who learn their astrology. They immediately go, oh, I'm a Virgo, or oh, I'm a Taurus moon. And so this is that. And this, so those things I think resonate. So I think for astrologers, you're saying, you know you're a Virgo moon or you know you're a Taurus moon. How do you experience that? Like, I have asked people how you've learned about your sun or your chart, or what parts of it do you resonate with? What parts don't sit right with you? Like, is
Mhm.
that a way of me kind of inadvertently asking them about their parts?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, if you're asking anyone, like, how do you feel about money? How do you feel about
Yeah,
spending money? Or
yeah,
how do you feel about like traveling or, packing, right?
yeah,
Like your belongings, your things. You're
yeah.
already bringing up their parts.
That's so true. And I love this too because I do feel like a lot of times astrologers and doing readings, or even people coming to astrologers for readings, like they want you to tell them who they are and tell them about themselves. And the chart can absolutely do that. But I always tell people it's a dialogue. You're living this. I'm just looking at a piece of paper with some possible manifestations. You've lived this life, you've lived X amount of years, or you're raising a child of X age and how much they've lived. And it's your life, you're living it, and so it's very, I can't tell you who you are. I can help show you, and some parts of yourself, right,
Mhm.
and start exploring how you work with those energies in positive ways where there is probably some positive things and where you may challenge, and then once you point those out, we can go deeper into whatever your area of question is or things like that. But
Mhm.
often, almost all the time, I mean, the moon is essential, and we keep coming back to that. And especially whenever I'm working with a woman, or a mother, or a nurturer, a caregiver, a teacher, anybody. I mean,
Mhm.
it's just we live in our moon, so it's
Yeah.
almost more than the sun. The sun is the
Oh
journey
yeah.
of becoming, and the self is the goal. But and that's the other thing is like understanding the self is the goal of IFS, and then all of these parts are like all the planets and all the sub personalities and within the planets. I mean, this is why it goes so deep, and it can be this ongoing work and exploration, right?
Yes, exactly. And then as far as like the moon and parts are concerned, like I think once you have a kid, you basically have a bunch of new parts that are born inside you.
Oh yeah,
Right, like you're gonna have a bunch of new parts that are focused on the kid and parenting. And if you have more than one kid, you're like there's gonna be a whole bunch of parts that are connected to that other kid. Like to every child you have, there's gonna be its own like little cluster of parts. So like you have the parts that are like connected to you and your well-being,
yeah.
like up until you became a mom. But as soon as you become a mom, then it's like these parts that are connected to your child's well-being don't really care about your well-being necessarily,
Is that
right?
why so many moms then just sort of put themselves on the back burner? And the
Yeah,
constant
yeah.
work is to get them to remember to take care of themselves?
Yes, especially if your kids are young, because
Yes.
those parts that are focused on like, the health
Yeah.
of your baby,
Yeah.
they don't care if you've slept, if you've eaten. They're
Yeah.
only focused on like keeping this vulnerable being
Yeah.
alive.
Yeah.
And so it's almost just like it's really hard to even
Yeah.
allow the other ones that used to care about your needs, your wants, your pleasures to come and take some space.
And do you feel like, I mean, I think that it's always trying to make that, to me has been like the journey of my life throughout my 14 years so far of being a mom, is to trying not to lose myself along the way. To doing the
Mhm.
best I can, but still realizing at times how enmeshed I am, and how, I mean, I'm just now, the older he gets, and this is an interesting look at like the evolution of motherhood and growth, because it's a process. Parenting is a process of letting go because we are so enmeshed, we're so bonded, we need to be.
Mhm.
And it's like with everything they can do on their own, you let them, it creates a little bit more space. You can find a little bit more time for you. And then the older they get, they do things to take you off, to break those strings a little longer, to help you let go more, to give them
Mhm.
their space. And little by little, you're like finding yourself again. But I always try to help with this bigger picture of when you're an empty nester and they're off and they're living their own life. Who the heck are you? When women lose their identity completely within their consumed lives as mothers or wives or whatever, the same way people lose themselves in work and they don't focus on family,
Yeah.
right?
And maybe even just normalizing, like, of course there's identity loss.
Yeah,
How
and
how can there
normalizing it.
not be? How can there not be? And so rather than pathologizing it, it's like, okay, yeah, makes sense.
Yes.
Maybe those old parts of you are so far gone that maybe they're kind of just in the periphery and it's time to grow some new seedlings.
Right. And maybe some of them come back in and you're reinvite,
Yeah,
like meeting them again later. And maybe you've grown beyond them and they aren't part of you anymore in that way. And
exactly.
new parts have grown from the experience of motherhood and so I do think that's again where just like you said, don't pathologize it all. Just it's more about building compassion for yourself and recognizing, you know, that it is a process and a journey. And I have a good friend who's an astrologer who always says, you can make time for yourself, like maybe it's seasonally. If your life is consumed with a house full of kids and all the things going on, like, maybe you're like, once a season, I take a day to myself or, whatever it is. What if you can't do a daily routine, there's no way it's happening. Or you can't get in an hour a week. You've
Hmm.
got to like, okay, I'm even if it's next month on this day, I'm going to steal away and go do for me. That's why, getting your hair done, your nails done, whatever, just sitting in the chair and just like taking that
Exactly.
time and that being okay and having compassion for yourself
And having compassion if you do take that self-care and there's parts that come up that feel guilty or worried,
all
that's
the
okay
time,
too. We
all the
don't,
time.
and that's what, we would expect those parenting parts to never, it's there 24/7. Like,
Yeah.
so that's parts of you like, what are you doing? Getting your
Yeah.
hair done. And so we would just say, like, I would encourage my client to say, okay, hi, I know you're working so hard. I know you're worried about so and so. It's okay. I hear you. It's okay that you're here.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you ever have clients come to you that feel like when you're teaching them to kind of work this way and to talk this way, have this kind of inner dialogue, that they start to feel crazy at all? That they're always
Yes,
talking to themselves.
some people get nervous about IFS and even the term parts because of DID, like dissociative identity, because it
Yes.
can be so pathologized. That's why IFS is actually quite radical, or when it
Oh,
first started in the 90s, because that at the time DID was still like, oh, this big stigma. And
okay.
IFS, I do think, has changed the therapy landscape to make that it's like, I think we can all agree, like most people will be like, yeah, I have different voices inside me. It's the old school therapy that sort of pathologized it in the first place.
Okay.
But if someone it feels like, okay, that doesn't, then they usually just don't do IFS and maybe it's not for you and that's okay too.
Yeah, I was just saying there's so many modes of,
Yeah.
approaches to working, but I just had that kind of thought with like all these parts. It can be maybe disorienting for some people to be like, I feel like I'm going crazy because I'm talking to all these parts. It's like a multiple personality disorder, right? But
And it's
it's
like, I guess a disorder would be considered if you're not able to function.
mm, okay.
Right? But if but and if that, if this was someone that I knew wanted IFS and they were naming this, we would get to know this part. What is this part worried about being named crazy? What associations does it have? Like,
Yes.
or history, or maybe it's even inherited. Someone in the
Yeah,
family
the
line,
family.
perhaps, maybe really struggled with severe mental disorder. And so usually, like, so we would just, if this person is, if IFS is for them, then we look at that part and we talk to it.
That makes total sense. Yeah. So you have like a conversation when you're working with the parts, like just
Yeah.
just feel like like give me an example. Like do you just ask, it's mostly like asking questions and kind of like uncovering.
Sometimes it could be, and here's maybe my suggestion because I know we're almost at our time. It's like
Yeah.
maybe we do a live IFS bit like
Oh
with you
yeah.
and your parts, and that way that could be the best example for folks is
Yeah, I'd be down for that.
that
I mean, we
could.
already kind of like I think we've already talked a little bit. I'm trying to think of like if I'm thinking about the mother and the moon for myself and I have a moon in Libra
Mhm.
and it's in the fourth house of home. It's very close with Pluto, so I know there's like a very, very extreme desire to have peace and harmony in my home.
Yes.
And I do believe that I always want to create win-wins, but oftentimes I will people please or I will sacrifice my own needs in order to keep the peace and that kind of thing. Um, and then my son is a Pisces moon, sun moon. He has a lot of Pisces. My
Mhm.
husband is a Cancer sun,
Mhm.
but he has a Capricorn moon. He is like the worker, the provider, husband provider, right? Um, So for me, I think there's this need to keep the peace, and I think I struggle sometimes um, wanting to keep that balance and over compromising in some way. And
Mhm.
I believe that maybe that came from if I look to my relationship with my mom, the way I see her. So if my moon is in Libra, I saw my mom very accommodating. She was very accommodating the way that a Libra is. Um, but she was also just like with my Virgo on the fourth there, she was also just surviving and providing what was needed for us at that time as a single mother with two young children. And like, so there wasn't a lot of the love and real connection that I would have wanted or felt I needed, but that maybe there's some part of me that is trying to give more of that as a mom because I didn't get that. I mean, that seems like a
Yeah.
normal thing, right?
Yeah. And so what you just did is used astrology to like point to a potential path that
Yeah.
we would then take to go
Ooh, I
inside.
like that. Okay, that makes sense.
Like that's such we call that an IFS a trailhead.
Yeah, and I'm
It's a
an
big trailhead.
air person, so I want to communicate in order to feel. I know if I need to feel better, I will talk to a friend, or I need to have a conversation about something about I'm feeling. And with, a water and an earth moon, like my son being a water, like they're they're men of few words. They don't need to talk, you know? And even when I do, I see them glaze over. I know when they're full and what have you, but I'm like, I'm also the mediator of the family. I communicate to keep the
Mhm.
peace. I'm that way in my family. I'm the mediator.
Mhm.
Not necessarily
There's
I want to, but I just am.
there's a part of you that's a mediator, right?
There's a part of me that's a
I,
mediator. Yes.
and the quickest little IFS right now would just be to even go inside and wherever, we don't know where the mediator part is, but just to say, I see you, mediator part. You're kind of saying it like internally. You're doing an amazing job. I know how hard you're working. I know you're trying to keep this family together.
Mm.
And even to see, do you notice if it receives that message? Like, do you notice any shift or any?
I get the feeling like in my body, like, yes, I know you work hard. Yes, you do this, but there's almost this sense of, yeah, you're doing your job. Like there's a responsibility to do that.
I feel like that my guess, okay, and I don't know if you want to do this now or maybe we
Yeah.
do the IFS therapy as a separate,
Okay.
but like this could be kind of our segue into the next one, which is I feel like that's it responding. I feel like it's like I don't even need your validation. I'm just doing my job. Like that's the vibe that I'm getting from it. It's like whatever, thanks for seeing me and cool, back to work.
Yeah. And
I'm just
maybe
doing
that's
what I
the
do.
receiving part. I can't even receive that. I want to. I always tell my husband too. I remember telling him, like, I'm taking on the role of like this traditional role, even though I'm not, of being home and wife and mother, but don't ever make me feel like it's my job.
Mhm.
Right? And very grateful. We're still equals, all that kind of stuff.
That's
But
a
I do
different
feel like
part.
it's a different part because I do
Uh,
feel like it's my job.
Well, so the mediator part feels like its job and it's like it doesn't even care about accolades, whatever. It's just going to do it day in, day
Right.
out. There's
Yeah.
another part of you, maybe like a more like independent part that's like, no, 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 like don't, this is not assumed, right? So we're already naming parts of you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can connect, I can definitely connect and I know in my chart where certain things come from. And like, so I would just like dive deeper into that.
Mhm,
That,
mhm.
yeah, that makes total sense.
The chart becomes like the inroad.
Mhm.
Like it's right, like this is already like we could you like you all you would have to do is show up to a session like you already be like my moon in Libra and this and like it's like already it's like I know where to go. We can go and we're like we would get so much done.
Cool.
I feel like we already like we named a notice two parts right now. You already sent a message to one, it received it. Another one came up in response. Like that's already the beginning of the mapping,
Ooh, I
right?
see. Okay.
Your Libra moon pointed to this mediator part.
hmm
And
And
that
I mediate in even, and maybe this is where the parts of me that work hard to mediate to keep the peace, because if there's tension or anything in my home, or in my son or my husband, like if there's a tension there, I want to mediate that. I want to create peace there when sometimes, there's a need or want to go in and make sure everyone's good
Mm-hmm.
when maybe that's not my job. Maybe that's not where I need to be. I need to let that happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's probably like a part of me that does, I would say, struggle to like want to keep the peace, like, or worried about what that might be, that interchange might be doing to my son. Like
Exactly.
I know his, you know what I mean? When you
So
have
there's the
information.
mediator part sounds like it does its job. It's like almost to the mediator part, like every to a hammer, right? Like it's like, I gotta go, I gotta go. And there's another part that's like, but do we go? Like, and so that's another one that's kind of more has a maybe broader view of things.
Yeah, that makes sense. I love how you can get into that. I mean, I think that it's like you said, it's very similar, but there's like this deep thing. Like you said, here's your moon in this and your connection there. And then you can look into how that plays a role in your family. And maybe
And in your being.
and in my being in terms of
Yeah.
like finding that inner balance and realize, I'm okay? Am I okay?
Yes. Well, you basically get to talk to your moon or like, right,
Yes.
symbolically.
Yeah.
You get to talk to your Saturn. You get to talk to a transit placement.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. Okay, so this is really good. Um, so what can we leave them with, to sort of like ponder on or play with about the moon? And then if people have like if they really like this, and this is where we're like kind of introducing this concept and like we want to chat about these different, parts in the chart with the parts work and
Yeah.
see how they can really blend and work together nicely in case someone really does want to go deeper into parts work with you.
Mhm.
You get a astrology reading, I'd be like, you know what, parts work might really work well for this for you, and I send them to you. You know what I mean? But if you're interested in this, if the people want to drop questions and want us to revisit or do more of this, we certainly will. But we want to give like a taste and an intro to
Yeah.
this idea as we go into each one. But what do you think we can leave them with to sort of like look at your moon and ask what you know of it and maybe ask a few questions? I think you
Mhm.
had sent me something as like a really great way
Oh
to,
yeah. Here's one maybe. When my child is insert whatever emotional reaction your child might have, what part of me gets triggered?
yes.
Like so, if think about their moon sign, whatever it is that their moon, and like think about what might get triggered for you.
Yes, I love that because you can, if you know your moon, which all moms, they know your moon, you know your child's moon. So if you ask that question, what in me gets triggered? Does that relate to
Hmm.
the differences in even the elemental nature between
Hmm.
you and your child's moon?
Hmm. Exactly. And so whatever that gets triggered, that's a part.
That's a part.
And then there's questions that, and maybe people can email us if they kind of want a
Yeah.
worksheet. We can send out the
Yeah.
questions that you would ask that part to get to know better.
Yeah. Because if you're triggered, you can take that mommy time out and ask yourself, why, what am I feeling? What might be triggered here? And
Mhm.
maybe it's, I need a nap, or I'm really tired and hungry, and so is my child. We should eat something. Or I'm really riled up, and so are they. Maybe we need to just go to the park. Maybe we
Yeah,
need some fresh air. So it's that kind of like starting to ask those questions about what do we both need in the moment. That might be two different things. Like go to
exactly.
your corners. Like you sit in color, or you run outside and play, and I'm going to sit here on the patio and watch, and you're both getting what you need.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's me. I'm a Libra moon. There I go, creating a win-win.
Perfect. Yes. Yeah. And then in the worksheet, we can have the kind of typical like moon sign, the child moon signs and what they might have and
Yeah, that
what
would
might
be
get
great. We could
triggered
put
for the mom.
together a little worksheet and
Yeah.
do like a little download
Yeah.
for people, but definitely love to have people like ask questions if they want to go a little
Yes.
bit
Ask
more.
questions.
Ask questions. I love questions. I
Yes.
love to like, to have things to respond to. That's my
Yes. Same. Same.
um
So send us your questions and yeah, this was so nice.
Yeah. And then next time we can maybe we'll start with like sun and a moon and sun. So we kind of get that internal, and then we get that sun, that self, and then we can like work in between all the like
Okay.
other planets and placements. Does that sound
Yeah,
like a plan?
I'm excited. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, cool. This was awesome, Sabrina. I'm so excited. And yeah, stay tuned for the next episode on IFS and astrology.
Yay.
Bye. Thanks for listening, and I hope you gained some great astrology insight and inspiration from today's show. I'd love to hear, so drop me a comment or share in a review. Check out the show notes for all the details and links about today's episode, how you can connect with me on social or work with me directly. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. Oh, and for my moms out there, be sure to join my private Conscious Parenting with Astrology Moms group on Facebook. Come join a growing community of like-minded mamas supporting each other in the hardest job in the world with the help of astrology. Hope to see you over there. Take care and keep nurturing the nature, friends. I'll see you on the next episode.